Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Saturday, December 11th, 2021. I'm your host, George Kerth, here joined by Cody Roadcap. Cody, I like that you brought the pineapples back to the show today.
Absolutely, George. It's getting cold here on the East Coast, trying to bring back those sunshine and summer vibes.
I like it. And Tyler Snyder's with us as well. Tyler, I like that you brought a mustache to the show as well.
I did? Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. If anybody was listening to 2 weeks ago, they would know that George and I made a bet between Cole Kmet and Foster Moreau. Whoever had more points, the loser had to wear a mustache on the next show. Obviously, I wasn't on the last show. But I wanted to be aware that the reason I made the bet was because I wanted to prove that Cole Kmet is not as great as George always wants everybody to think, and he still sucked. Foster Moreau just sucked more.
So in reality, we were both wrong, but I still won because I had more fantasy points. But okay, I get your point. You made your point. We'll see what happens when we talk about some Bears this week on the show. I also want to give a little quick shout out to friend of the show, Kempy. We call him Tyler Kemp because he made us an amazing flag that is now in my background. And there's also a football courtesy of Cody there. So thank you very much to both of you.
I have a Christmas tree in the background if we're just going to talk about what's in our background.
It's not even lit, so you're really not in the holiday spirit.
I'm sorry. And you got a caricature of you and your girlfriend, so there is something.
Yeah,
I do. And if we're going to go sports, this is a Titans wine glass and a Titans shot glass. So, I mean, that's close enough. I don't drink. Neither does my girlfriend, so I don't know why we have them, but they're on display.
Now that we made Kempy feel really not special. Make sure you check us out on our social media channels and on thecouchgms.com for even more than you get from this podcast. Now, normally here we jump into NFL news. We did cover a lot of NFL news in our earlier show, but there is a little bit of a deeper subject that we had to hit. We heard during the Thursday Night Football telecast that former Broncos and Jets wide receiver Demaryius Thomas suddenly passed at the age of 33. Our thoughts are out to his family and friends. Cody, I know you had a couple words to say here as well, so I'll let you take over from here.
Yeah, just devastating news we heard when the news broke about Demaryius Thomas, 33 years old, definitely gone way too soon. And, if you haven't gotten a chance to go over to Twitter, I'll try to retweet some of the stories that are being shared about him. Some of the things, don't get us wrong. Demaryius Thomas was a beast. He was a part of the Broncos Super Bowl run. He was a great player on the field. Like, people forget how good he was on the field. But after today, you realize that Demaryius Thomas was a 10 times the person off the field that he was on the field. And that's saying a lot for someone of his stature. So definitely a heartbreaking loss to the sports world, to the Denver Broncos, and all the thoughts and prayers out there for his family. And I did just have one kind of fun story to share, as we're reminiscing on Demaryius Thomas. If you don't remember, Demaryius Thomas played at Georgia Tech. I have been on record saying I'm a Virginia Tech fan. Well, he would light us up, and it was so crazy because him and Calvin Johnson, they both came from Georgia Tech for a team that ran the triple option. They were wide receiver U for a while on a team that he only saw 40 catches in his 2008 season in a college system. He didn't catch the ball, but the fact that he stayed there, was committed, again, just showing how early on the type of person he was. And again, definitely a tough loss, and thoughts and prayers from the Couch GMs to his family.
Definitely agree with that, Cody. And we will keep them in our thoughts as we hear more that comes out of what happened to Demaryius Thomas. I think now we have to give the people what they came here for, though. And why don't we jump right into our Week 14 fantasy preview. Week 14 is the last week for the fantasy regular season if you're doing it right. So if this is not the last week of your fantasy regular season, if you're in the playoffs or whatever it might be, fix that. The other thing is it's the last week for bye weeks. And there are some fairly big bye weeks this week. Maybe it's not the top end teams, but the Indianapolis Colts have a bye, the New England Patriots, the Miami Dolphins, and the Philadelphia Eagles, meaning we need 2 wins for a Couch GM sweep this week. But yeah, we have some teams that we have to fill some positions. So why don't we jump right into our first game, the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington football team, and we'll give the people our favorite fills at certain positions here. One of them might be Ricky Seals-Jones because we lost Logan Thomas last week to injured reserve again. And Ricky Seals-Jones appears to be back. He was a good fill while he was healthy the first time we lost Logan Thomas. Do you think he's going to be just as good this time?
I think so. Ricky Seals-Jones is coming off of an injury. We saw when Logan Thomas came back the first time from IR, he was right back in the starting lineup, getting a ton of targets. When he went out the first time before Ricky Seals-Jones got hurt, he was in there almost 100% of the snaps, getting a ton of targets. They seem to like to feature one tight end. So they did lose Logan Thomas again. Just to clarify, they did not think he tore his ACL that we learned on the Tuesday show. But because this is his second stint on IR, he is definitely out for the season. So Logan Thomas will not be returning, but Ricky Seals-Jones should fit in there nicely in what this year has been one of the wildest tight end landscapes.
Yeah, I agree, Cody. I think he is. I would say that he's more dartboard worthy. I don't think he's I definitely have to throw him in my lineup right now kind of guy. I'm not that thrilled with him, but I definitely think he's dartboard worthy. If you're kind of light on tight ends, you're looking for somebody for this week, you could definitely take a shot at him, especially in this matchup, which the Cowboys defense has shown flashes this year, but at the same time, I still expect this to be a high scoring shootout personally. If you're a better, bet the over, in my opinion. But I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and the person I really like on Washington is somebody that I could not trust all year long. It's hard to take myself seriously with this stupid mustache, but somebody I couldn't trust all year long and now is really coming alive and being dominant, and that's Antonio Gibson. We drafted him high to start the year thinking he was going to be amazing. He's been disappointing. Then again, the entire NFC East is loaded with running backs, every one of which has been disappointing this year. Saquon, Zeke, Gibson, and Miles Sanders all been a bit of a letdown this year. But Gibson, I think, is the guy where you definitely have to start him now. If you have him, the Washington football team's offense is really just based on him at this point. They try to run the ball with him, throw the ball to him. The whole offense is going through Gibson right now.
Yeah, I do think it's worth noting that D Mckissick is still in concussion protocol, but he did go to a limited practice Thursday and Friday. So he could be back eating some of those pass catching snaps like we saw early in the season. But right now, you mentioned it, Gibson is definitely balling out. So keep him in your lineups. I do want to go to their wide receivers. I know Terry McLaurin, I feel like we're at the point where he's similar to Allen Robinson. The guy that we thought was going to be elite, he has a lot of, potential. He sees targets, but he just isn't putting up fantasy points. And are we at the point now where we have to really consider not playing Terry McLaurin and not get stuck up on the name? Or what are your guys' thoughts on Terry McLaurin?
I wouldn't say he's a guy that you just can't play anymore. I would say he's more of a matchup-based guy. He's no longer the guy you just play every single week. He's now the guy that you play based off of the matchup. And this matchup, personally, I actually like. I think this is a week that you can start Terry McLaurin happily, but you do have to tread lightly going into the playoffs, and hopefully you do have some backup receiver options.
I agree with that one. So I don't feel like I need to add anything else on there. And I don't think there's really anybody else on Washington I'd be thinking about. Potentially, if you're desperate at quarterback, a Taylor Heineke, but I think there probably would be better options on your waiver wire, considering people like Taysom Hill aren't widely owned. But we can move on then to the Cowboys side of the ball. I want to touch on Tony Pollard for a second, because I know I texted the group here yesterday, and Tony Pollard suffered a Les Frank foot injury. Normally, when you hear that, the running back, players are out for entire seasons with those injuries. Apparently, he completely tore it when most people just partially tear it. And because of that, he's able to play this week. It's got to be the weirdest injury I've ever heard of. But all you Zeke owners who were hoping there wouldn't be a split anymore because Tony Pollard wasn't going to be there, Pollard is good to go. And there's still going to be that split. I know, Tyler, you're actually not starting Zeke or Barkley in our league of record. Are you worried about Zeke at all, or is it just because you have better options?
I am worried about Zeke. I mean, I do think the Cowboys are still going to utilize him, and I think if they get down to the red zone, they're still going to want to give that touchdown to Zeke, which salvages some points. But I think Zeke is more injured than what he's letting on, than what the Cowboys are letting on. And if you've watched him in recent leagues, he just seems slow. He doesn't seem to have the same burst that you usually see out of him, the same strength. He's just kind of running half speed. And because of that, Pollard is so much more valuable because he is faster. He's catching the ball well. He's just providing an all around, better usable running back for the Cowboys, which is really hurting Zeke's value. So I personally am scared of Zeke right now. I'll still play him if I don't have the other options, but luckily in that league, I do have the other options. So I am benching Zeke.
And I think that we have to also touch on the wide receivers. This could be the first time in a long time that the big three in Dallas is all playing at the same time. So I still think you have to start CeeDee Lamb. You also still have to start Amari Cooper. But then we're back down to the Michael Gallup situation. Gallup was the person who we drafted very late in drafts because we were worried that he wasn't going to get the volume with all the mouths to feed. Are you thinking about starting him in any leagues, or are you avoiding it because the big three is finally back together?
I mean, there's not a lot of top wide receivers on bye this week, so I feel like you could be pretty good. But maybe you had Keenan Allen, who is on the COVID list that we'll talk about when we get to the Chargers matchup. Michael Gallup might not be a bad option if you need to squeeze out. It is very hard to talk when Tyler's mustache is just falling off and on. So if you're listening in the car right now, make sure you head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, and watch this episode. It's pretty funny just watching us in the background. But back to Gallup. I think there's definitely a spot in place for him. I was kind of caught off guard when Tyler said he expected a shootout coming off of Washington coming off back-to-back games, winning 17-15. But I do. So it's very interesting that we're going to see a shootout here, but it's divisional. It definitely could potentially happen. And if it's going to be a shootout, then I think Gallup should be in your lineup.
I could see where shootout comes from, just to defend Tyler here for a second, because I don't think I do that too often. Just because there's a lot of trash talk being thrown back and forth. There's a lot of trash talk being thrown back and forth between Dallas and Washington. Washington almost smells like they can come back in this division if they win this game. Dallas is saying they're Washington. We got this win anyway. There's games that are led by something like that do tend, I feel like, to be more shootouts because it's just going to be punch after punch thrown on offense. And so I could see where he's coming from. I don't know if I like it enough to start Gallup if I can help it. But it makes me not worried about someone like a Dalton Schultz, who would still be the third or fourth pass catching option. But I think there's going to definitely be enough volume going around for him to be a top fantasy tight end like he has been most of the season.
And I think it's also worth noting, you talked about the trash talk. Mike McCarthy pretty much guaranteed a victory. So that normally doesn't go well when the coach does it. So definitely a fun game at the 1 o'clock hour. We should probably move on, though. That's probably way too much Cowboys talk for my liking. My head's starting to hurt. So move on to another team that I'm not even going to talk to. I'm just going to let the guy with the mustache. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Tyler, break us down. Who's playing for the Titans? Do they get Julio Jones back? Which running back to play? The floor is yours.
All right, so I know that for recent weeks it has been who do you start between Dante Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard? Well, guys, guess what? Jeremy McNichols is back. So we have all three of them. I think it's going to be a three-headed split. I do think there's going to be plenty of rushing yards. So one of them is definitely going to be valuable, but trying to figure out which one it is going to be next to impossible. You're just going to have to play it by ear and hope that you pick the right one. I like Dontrell Hilliard this week, but the issue is Jeremy McNichols is also a pass-catching back just like Hilliard, so they could both split. But if it was up to me, I'm going Dontrell Hilliard. As far as receivers, it does look like Julio Jones is going to play. He is also going to have Golden Tate next to him. We are going to have both receivers for this game. Which one is going to be heavily utilized more? Probably Julio Jones. He's probably the guy to start. But Golden Tate is worth a speculative add if you are light on wide receivers and you're looking for a potential good fill-in, because the Titans are usually better with their number 2 receiver rather than their number 1. After that, don't start any tight ends. I still wouldn't start Ryan Tannehill. I mean, it's a good matchup for the Titans, but I don't think I'm starting too many of them unless I have to.
Tyler, I'm just going to relieve you of your stressor here. Since we were both kind of wrong, we got 15 minutes of a mustache out of you. If you want to, I will let you take it off for the rest of the episode. We got our good little laugh, especially when it does that little wiggle right before it falls off your face. It's perfect.
But, I mean, it has been kind of tough. I mean, I feel like the tape that I have on it is just bad. I need to fix it somehow, and I don't really know how to fix it. I need something to help hold it on. Here we go. Maybe a Band-Aid. There's a Bo Peep Band-Aid, anybody? That'll help hold it on there a little bit. Maybe we'll see how long this lasts, and if this falls off, I am just out.
All right, I appreciate it. That is fantastic. Tyler's house is the best house for random Band-Aids. I feel like at some point you're just going to send out a picture of all the random Band-Aids you've got at your house. That's just
I got a whole box of Toy Story right here.
Maybe he should send the Band-Aids to the Titans because they're pretty banged up.
Hey, we are getting healthier, all right? I think the Titans and the Packers are two of the biggest teams right now for returning players from injury, which is dangerous because, wow, this is just not going well. Guys, please go to the YouTube channel and watch this episode. It's been fun, but it is done. Look, it's scary when you have teams that have had this many injuries, but the players are coming back from injury, because if they can come back well from that injury and knock off some of the rust, they are well rested. And having a whole team of well rested players going into the playoffs is a scary, scary thing. So watch out for the Titans. Watch out for the Packers.
I love it. And I want to you mentioned Golden Tate. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go out there and, speculative add him just yet, but I will say he is he is super cheap in DraftKings if you're doing a daily fantasy lineup. DraftKings is not a sponsor, but they're welcome to be anytime they want. Only $3,200 for a guy that could be a wide receiver 2 against a pretty bad passing defense. But Tyler, I know you could talk about him forever. That's probably enough. Titans, unless George, I feel like I just cut you off if maybe you wanted to say something, but I'll let you talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, which we did find out that James Robinson is back. He is not on the injury report, but other than that, is there anyone worth playing?
No, I really don't think so. I was going to say just James Robinson. There was a report that came out this week where Trevor Lawrence had said that the Jaguars need to stop benching James Robinson. He's been benched twice so far this year because of fumbles, and he's basically their best offensive piece, and he wants to get him involved in the offense. That makes me feel better that the quarterback is sticking his neck out for James Robinson. I think he's going to be right back to his normal self this week. Outside of him, everyone
on that.
Okay,
Before
go ahead.
We move on to the other players. The Jaguars are a terrible football team. Okay,
yeah,
but they're a young football team, and they're trying to build up from the ground up. And James Robinson is a young, talented running back that they could really build their franchise around. Now, you have a college coach that is now coaching in the NFL, and he's going with his college antics of trying to teach his young guys a lesson. What are you teaching James Robinson? Hey, this will teach you you're not supposed to fumble. As if any running back in the NFL doesn't already know you're not supposed to fumble. Yes, he's fumbled twice in a row. Yes, they benched him for both of them. After benching James Robinson for a fumble, Carlos Hyde then fumbled, and they benched him, so they played Laviska Shenault at running back. It's absolutely laughable to be that bad of a team and then to bench some of your best players when you really don't have many good playmakers to begin with, all because of fumbles, which, by the way, anybody out there who's like, well, I kind of get it. I mean, James Robinson needs to learn to stop fumbling. I want you to go see his fumble from this past week. It was against the Rams. And James Robinson had both arms on the ball as he was running through a pack, and Aaron Donald came over and just beast mode him, shoved his hand in there and ripped that thing out. I'm pretty sure if Aaron Donald ripped at my head the way he ripped at that ball, my head would be decapitated. It would definitely happen. It was vicious. It was a crazy play, and I don't think there's a running back in the NFL that would hold on to the ball in that situation the way that Donald got him. So benching him for that is absolutely ridiculous. Jags, you're a bunch of idiots.
Wow.
Man, I could not have said it better if I had scripted it myself. So thank you for jumping in.
And while Snyder's heated, let's just move on to the Seattle Seahawks. I got to hear what he has to say about them.
The Seahawks are terrible. The Seahawks are a joke at this point. I mean, honestly, like DK Metcalf, he's not even startable anymore. We went from the beginning of the season where DK was a number one wide receiver for your team, and now he's not even startable on your roster anymore. I mean, even against the Texans, I'm still questionable to play him because what has he done for you? What have the Seahawks done for you? Russell, what are you throwing at? It's just been abysmal. And this run game, look, as a Titans fan, we tried the Adrian Peterson experiment. Didn't work. I saw that we got down to the goal line. We tried to force Adrian Peterson in there just to give the old man his touchdowns. Didn't work. None of your running backs are doing anything right now, and yet they were still trying to force the running backs that were doing the least. I mean, you got people like Travis Homer that were actually getting at least a few yards per carry, and they were like, nah, we're going to keep running with AP, who's getting 1.5 yards a carry. It's just the whole offense is stupid. All the decisions they're making are just questionable at best, and I think an aggressive gum chewer needs to go.
Wow, he's calling for a coach firing here. I like it. It's worth noting for everybody out there that doesn't know, Adrian Peterson is out this week. But you know how they've been trying to force Alex Collins the same way they were forcing AP. It's not working. I agree. If I had to go to bat for any running back on Seattle, it'd be for Travis Homer because he seems to be the most successful back, and he's been getting the least amount of work. And I don't trust that the Seahawks are actually going to use him enough to play him in fantasy. But I'm right there with you. What they're doing right now doesn't make sense. Russell Wilson still looks a mess. And I'm more confident in Tyler Lockett than DK Metcalf, which never should be a thing. And I still am not confident in Tyler Lockett.
Look, my big thing is teams have to learn to adapt. The Seahawks have always been a run-first team. Chris Carson gets injured. Their backups are not getting it done, and they're still trying to be a run-first team. You got Tyler Lockett. You got the rookie, Dwayne Eskridge, who honestly has potential. You got DK Metcalf. You got Russell Wilson. Figure out some plays that'll actually get it done through the air. Disguise some plays, get some people open, go with the play action, do something. Stop forcing the run. They're so one-dimensional. It's run, and then terrible pass, or it's super predictable play calling. And for the love of God, Pete Carroll, if it's 4th and 1 at a good situation, have the cojones to go for it. This guy has gone for, I think, the least 4th downs out of any head coach in the NFL this year and the last few years. Got to look that statistic up, but he does not go for it on 4th down. It doesn't matter if it's 4th and inches at the 40. He doesn't like going for it. It makes no sense. You have Russell Wilson, a mobile quarterback. You got these other receivers. Go for it for once. It might actually change things, especially when you're not even in the playoffs right now. What do you have to lose?
Wow, you're definitely on one. I want to say 2 quick things. I'm going to let you talk about the Texans, but one, I do think you got to keep DK in your lineup this week against the Houston Texans. I know it's been rough the last couple of weeks, but he did finish with 8.5 points and a half-point PPR last week. He was starting to come around. This week should be a good week, to the point where, we might actually hear for the first time in a while that, Russell Wilson's never had an MVP vote. Just saying that might come across the broadcast because the Texans are that bad. But the way he's rolling, I want Tyler to tell me about the Texans because I'm all for this.
Man, I hope I don't disappoint at this point. But the Texans came out and announced that Davis Mills is their starter moving forward. Exciting news here, guys. A rookie who has shown you absolutely nothing as compared to a quarterback that actually started the season on fire. It is definitely disappointing news for anybody who has Brandon Cooks, anybody who has David Johnson, anybody. Okay, I'm going to stop myself there. Who has these guys? Who is starting any Texans at this point? What are you doing with your fantasy life? Look, if you're at the point where you're starting Davis Mills, you're starting David Johnson, if your team is that bad right now from injuries, from whatever else, you lost. I'm sorry. Good season. Try again next year. It's laughable. There's nobody on the Texans that is worth starting. Not the defense. I wouldn't even start their kicker. Nothing. No one on the Texans. Don't touch them.
And that is still the most we've talked about the Texans all year because normally it's Brandon Cooks. Moving on.
He's not even worth starting anymore. I mean, he's just so wishy-washy.
Not anymore. No, exactly. Like the Texans have gotten worse as the year goes on. Their schedule just gets harder and harder. If you're still relying on Brandon Cooks, hope you get a good week out of him this week. Once buys are over, I hope you have other options. But I don't even like playing him this week. So I'm with you.
Yeah, that one's tough. I know the matchup is pretty decent, but he hasn't been as strong as he was the first half of the season. But George already alluded to it. That's too much Texans talk. So let's talk about a good matchup. At least it should be a good matchup. That's the Las Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll start with the Raiders side because Darren Waller is out. So are we going to have an Foster Moreau versus Cole Kmet 2.0? I'll let the guys answer that one. Kenyon Drake, as we mentioned on the earlier week show, he is out. So Josh Jacobs should probably be in your lineup. He came off the injury report. He is not listed heading into Sunday. So that's good news for him. But the guy I want to talk about is Hunter Renfro. I don't know if it's because I feel like the dude has already been in the league for 15 years. I felt like he played 10 years at Clemson. Like, I know I think he's in year 2, maybe 3, and he obviously didn't play that long at Clemson. I just don't see him as a top wide receiver, but that's what he is. I believe over the second half of the season, he is wide receiver 9. So definitely a guy that you need to start. I mean, he has, outside of yardage, which yardage is a big factor in fantasy football. Like, I understand that. But, boom games versus bust games, like he's right up there with Tyreek Hill in the same matchup. So without Darren Waller, especially, Hunter Renfro should be in your lineup.
This team, I tell you. Well, I'm all for it. I love Hunter Renfro. I like him as a player, like him in your lineup. Cool. The reason I shake my head is because there's something about the look of the people on this team. I mean, it's already been well known that I think Derek Carr looks like Sid from Toy Story. You saw my Bo Peep Band-Aid, so I know my Toy Story. But Hunter Renfro, is there ever been a guy that you see that looks less like a football player? Even in pads, you look at him, you're just like, this guy looks less athletic than me. And that's saying a lot. He just doesn't look like a football player, but man, you put the helmet on and he gets out there on the field, you would never know that he looks like a total dork wearing dad jeans. He is out there running great routes, making great plays. This guy, Third and Renfro is what his nickname was earlier in the season. He has expanded on that because he's getting the ball on first and second down now too. He is definitely a guy you got to have in your lineup. Just don't look at his face. It'll scare you.
I almost feel like we have to post this segment in @Renfro on Twitter and see if he gets back with some workout photo. I'll show you that I'm here.
I like Hunter Renfro. I don't need him to think that this is like hate coming from. So just post Tyler's video segment.
It's not hate. Like, I still really like Hunter Renfro. It's just he looks like Uncle Hunter who goes a little too hard at the barbecue when a football gets broken out, trying to pretend like he really is an NFL player. But on the field, he actually is really good. It just doesn't make sense.
I definitely get you there. I just wanted to see what your reaction would be to that. But sticking with the Raider side, we know Kenyon Drake was injured last week. He's out for the season. More touches for Josh Jacobs if he can stay on the field. I like that in this matchup, even though the Chiefs probably could get up in this game. Still like Josh Jacobs. I'm probably staying away from Foster Moreau. I may say I'm even staying away from Cole Kmet later. That's not the point. I don't know if there's anyone else on the Raiders I would even think about. The receivers outside of Renfro are still wishy-washy. Don't love Derek Carr in the second half of the season, so that pretty much wraps it up for me between just Jacobs and Renfro.
So, George, I got a quick question for you.
Okay.
On the Tuesday show, you talked about how at this time in the season, you don't care as much about running back depth as you do getting solid backups for your guys. Is Peyton Barber without Kenyon Drake a guy that if you're a Josh Jacobs owner, a guy that you're considering that needs to be on your lineup because Josh Jacobs has been injured on and off all season long?
I actually do really like that ad. I mean, it would have been Kenyon Drake as of last week, but now we saw what Peyton Barber could do when he was a feature back earlier in the season before they started to get Kenyon Drake involved in that offense, and he had successful fantasy weeks. So I think definitely if you're a Josh Jacobs owner, I would go out there and grab a Peyton Barber. And just in case insurance policy, you still have a starting running back in the Raiders backfield if anything does happen down the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I just want to say, as going with Josh Jacobs a little bit more, like, I know that usually people have a guy like Josh Jacobs, they have to start him because they don't have the depth. But Josh Jacobs moving forward, especially this week, I have him as a top 10 running back. I am 100% the type of guy who has benched him recently for guys like David Montgomery, guys like Cuba Hubbard, or even a James Conner who's really touchdown dependent. I have started guys like that over top of Jacobs recently. But Jacobs had 9 targets in the game last week on top of all his carries. He only turned it into 38 yards, so fantasy points-wise hasn't shown up yet. But that means they are trying to get him the ball in the passing game. If Derek Carr gets in trouble, he's the guy he turns and chucks it down to. That used to be Darren Waller. Now it's Josh Jacobs. I know he only got 38 yards out of it, but you know this is a guy that's talented enough to break one of those for a long touchdown because of a missed tackle or two. If he gets utilized in the pass game as much as he has been last week, and he keeps the rushing ability there, and Kenyon Drake isn't there, I think Josh Jacobs is a top 10 running back. He's a guy you cannot bench anymore.
Well, we're all speechless from that one. So
yeah, I'm gonna. I agree. One of those band-aids for all these hot takes Snyder is dropping. Top 10 for Josh Jacobs with the Chiefs, Browns, Broncos, maybe Colts, Forky? And Chargers left. And the Chargers are the last week, so it shouldn't be in your fantasy playoffs. So definitely a hot take there. But let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, we all know the guys that are starting: Tyreek Hill, not Peyton Manning. Wow, Patrick Mahomes. That was definitely a Freudian slip there. Don't know why. And Travis Kelce. We have to talk about the running backs, though. And, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been okay since he's been back. But the guy I want to talk about is Daryl Williams. He is still definitely heavily utilized in this offense. And he has seen 60-plus receiving yards in 3 of the last 5 games. So there's definitely something to him being used as a pass-catching role, being an asset like that I think, honestly, I think both him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are both startable at low-end RB2s.
Now, you see, I definitely put them on a close playing field because, the pass catches definitely help if you're in a half PPR or PPR. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is getting more of the work, and Williams is getting more of the catches, but I almost feel like with how little the Chiefs tend to use the running back position, I don't quite know if there's enough that I love either. I feel a little bit more confident with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't know if that's just because of the name and the fact that he's getting more total touches, but you could call them both low-end running back 2s. I put them more towards your low-end flex category if it's me talking personally.
Okay. If you say so. I'm not going to make a mustache bet or anything about it. Just, no. I mean, it's not a super hot take. Like, I'm not Tyler Snyder, but maybe he'll make a even better hot take.
Dude, I'm sweating from all these hot takes. I'm just saying. I'm just ready to throw some stuff down. Bench Tyreek Hill, cut Patrick. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not go crazy. No. All right, Cody, I'm going to give you a chance at a hot take. See if you take the bait or if you stick the straight and narrow. Patrick Mahomes has been a little disappointing lately. I think we can all agree on that. He has failed to break 15 fantasy points, I believe, in 3 straight games. I can tell you in 2 seconds. I got my fantasy team up. He has failed to break 15 in 5 of the last 6 games. He has failed to break 15. Now, there is a certain running back that throws the ball occasionally. I'm not talking about Lamar, who is a really good matchup this week, and that is Taysom Hill. He's available in a lot of leagues. Would you play Taysom Hill against the Jets over Patrick Mahomes?
Nope.
Didn't take the bait.
I can't do it. I see what you're going for, and I wouldn't be surprised if Taysom Hill ends up with more points because that's how the season is going. But we talked about it. I know it's dropped some, but Patrick Mahomes is still a top 7 fantasy quarterback on the season. With him, any given Sunday can go for 405 touchdowns. Like Patrick Mahomes is not gonna be on my bench when that game happens.
I hate how he still said, I still believe Taysom Hill could score more fantasy points, because I'm with you to the fact of, running quarterbacks are a cheat code, and the Chiefs tend to struggle against the Raiders. Their 2 losses last year in the regular season were against the Raiders. I was ready to throw here at Cody and say, I'll take Taysom Hill with more fantasy points than Patrick Mahomes this week, but it seems like he wants to pump the brakes a little bit on that.
I'll throw a little caveat into the mix here. I did say that 5 of the last 6 matchups, Patrick Mahomes failed to break 15. That is true. The one game that he did break 15 was his highest scoring game of the year of 36.2 points, and that was against the Las Vegas Raiders.
See? It could happen, George. But
yeah, it could.
Again, I'm not going to get cute and play Taysom Hill and have Patrick Mahomes go off on my bench. Like, that's just not how I play fantasy football. But maybe some people out there will like it. Maybe you're going to take a big swing, or maybe you're trying to throw a matchup to control the playoff matchups, which we'll talk about in a little bit at the end of the show. But it's probably enough talk on that game. Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints, because they're facing the Jets. On the Saints side, Mark Ingram is out on the COVID list. They are expected to get Alvin Kamara back. With Taysom Hill as the starter, we saw that he was definitely eating away at some yardage and definitely some red zone attempts last year. Are you putting Kamara back in your lineup with 100% confidence? Are you worried at all about potential re-injury or Taysom Hill stealing points? Or at this point, the running backs are so weak, like if Kamara's in, he's playing?
Well, I'll take it first here. I would like Kamara less if Ingram was also there too, because they have shown that they want to use Mark Ingram in this offense with Kamara, and then you also have Taysom Hill in there. That'd be a messy looking split. With 2 of them, I like Kamara better, so I'm going to definitely throw him in my lineup this week. 2, I'm normally with you on the play your stud scenario, so I do not want to lose a game with Kamara being on my bench, so I think he's in for that reason as well. I think it's a little different when it comes to quarterbacks playing your studs as opposed to like tight ends, wide receivers, running backs playing your studs. Like that, it's a little bit different because the position has been so much more inconsistent this year, and it's been very wishy-washy.
I'm starting Kamara.
Perfect. Is there a wide receiver that you're willing to start now that Deontay Harris is a 3-game suspension? Little Jordan Humphrey, maybe?
Nope.
They don't have a passing quarterback.
All right. Well, let's talk about the New York Jets. We'll keep this one short.
This is worse.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman is out. Michael Carter is most likely out. I don't understand why the Jets are on the East Coast, and I can't find their full Friday injury report anywhere. But like teams on the West Coast they're already out. So I don't know what Elijah Moore's status is. So if any of you guys have heard otherwise, I assume he's going to be questionable, so he'll be a game time decision. If he plays, are you still rolling with Elijah Moore as a flex option because of how well he's playing? Are you concerned with the quad injury? What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
I've been concerned with a hamstring injury more than a quad injury, personally. I feel like hamstrings are easier to re-aggravate. Quad is still a soft tissue injury, so it's still an injury that he could re-aggravate during the game or could limit him. But I think if you have Elijah Moore, it really depends on who your other options are. But if you're light at receiver, I feel like you almost have to play him because of how well he's been playing lately, and he is the favorite target, and they don't have a run game right now, so they have to throw the ball. So I think that he is definitely a guy you want to roll with. We do need to be aware because the Saints defense is on the better side of the defenses this year, so they are a team that could slow Elijah Moore down, but I think you're still rolling with him if he's healthy.
Yeah. I agree, and I think if you look at the Saints all season long, their defense still ranks pretty high, but they have been pretty rough the last 4 or 5 weeks. So, I think the Jets are in play. And if Elijah Moore doesn't go, I think that you can put Jamison Crowder in your flex as well. So maybe that's my hottest take of the day. George, you look like you got something to say about the New York Jets, which is kind of crazy.
Well, I wanted to update you on the injury report. Elijah Moore is questionable for the game with his quad. There's not really anything other than that. I think he's probably going to go. We have to worry about him being limited. The matchup is not fantastic, but I still like him. And I want to make sure that people don't fall into the trap of Ty Johnson this week. As much as I was even suggesting to Cody, maybe you play Ty Johnson. He catches some passes. The Jets were already trying to get Austin Walter mixed in a little bit, even with Tevin Coleman in the lineup. I feel like he's going to end up being the guy getting the running work and Ty Johnson in the passing game. And the Jets just weren't using Ty Johnson since Michael Carter's been out. It was almost like an Eagles situation where they got away from their running back room just got mixed up when there was an injury. The Jets are doing the same thing. I don't want to touch any of them. Don't fall into that trap if you can help it. But yeah, Elijah Moore should be good to go. He's questionable though.
All right, that's enough Jets. Falcons, Panthers is the next 1:00 matchup. We talked about it. Joe Brady has been fired. There's a new offensive coordinator or a new person calling plays in Carolina. Does that mean a resurgence of Cam Newton? He did not look good his last matchup, but he only had 3 rushing attempts. So that's kind of an interesting way to use Cam Newton's abilities. Falcons, I mean, it's a pretty good match. I mean, the Panthers pretty much beat, I'm trying not to swear, beat the Falcons pretty good against their matchup earlier this season. So I know it's a different quarterback. Is Cam Newton like a sneaky sleeper stream this week? If, maybe you had a Carson Wentz or you were rolling with Jalen Hurts, like, what are your thoughts on Cam Newton? I mean, you can just both shake your head too. That's pretty obvious.
That yawn kind of summed it up for me. Like,
sorry, I heard Cam Newton. I yawned.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm kind of feeling the same way. Rushing quarterbacks are a cheat code. Cam Newton, not so much anymore. He had that boom week, and then he looked like 2020 Cam Newton again. Like, no, I'd avoid that. I'd almost rather play Baker Mayfield, and I'm not touching Baker Mayfield with all his injuries and then going against the Ravens. Like, just a no.
Yeah, I said it on an earlier podcast where I said Cam Newton is the guy that comes out, looks hot to start the year, forces a guy to trade him for Stephon Diggs. Not naming names, but he's the guy that comes out, looks hot, and then totally busts. And we are in bust central. He could have a decent week, but I think his ceiling is like maybe 12 to 15 points, which I think you have more potential out of other guys. He has a much lower floor than other guys as well, so I'm not touching Cam Newton personally.
All right, and I assume Cuba Hubbard is the guy you want to play with no CMC there. I told you all on Tuesday, keep an eye on Amir Abdullah. He could be become the pass catching option, could be someone to monitor down the stretch run. And then DJ Moore at wide receiver. I think Robbie Anderson's out of your lineups for most teams, unless our good old 16-team Superflex, then maybe you're playing Robbie Anderson. So we'll move over to the Falcons. And I think at this point, Cordarrelle Patterson has earned the every week starter label.
Tyler, he finally said it.
Yeah, I still don't love it. And he'll probably suck this week because I finally gave in. But he's putting up the numbers. He's putting up the points. You're missing both Patriots running backs. You're missing Jonathan Taylor. You're missing Miles Sanders. You're missing Myles Gaskin to COVID as well, and a bye. So, you can't do very well with guys off the waiver wire. So, Cordarrelle Patterson, for the running backs that are left, is definitely in the starting lineup.
Look, Cordarrelle Patterson is going to be the first wide receiver / running back to ever win the NFL MVP. It's just, he's on pace for it. There's no quarterback that's worth fighting, and he's better than Jonathan Taylor. So it's going to happen. No, in all honesty, less hot take than that. Patterson is a guy where you cannot bench him. I don't care who you have. He's just been playing way too well. You cannot bench him. The Falcons want their offense through him. Kyle Pitts is more of a boomer bust kind of guy. He's usually pretty good, but every now and then he does put up a dud. But he's another guy that they definitely want to give targets to. It really depends on how that offense goes. Some days that offense shows up, it looks like it can actually put up points. Other days it shows up and it looks like my 6-year-old nephew's flag football team is playing out there, and nothing's going to get done. And hopefully in this matchup, it'll be a offensive game. However, the Panthers defense is honestly pretty good. They are a defense you can start in this matchup. I'm still rolling with Patterson and Pitts, though. Nobody else. Not touching Russell Gage. I don't care how good he's been lately.
I was going to ask you Russell Gage as a quick. So you say no. Cody, you avoiding Russell Gage too?
I mean, most likely, yeah, like the guys we've already talked about, like I'd rather play the Elijah Moore or Jamison Crowder over him. I mean, I'd rather play Brandon Cooks over Russell Gage even. So, yeah, I'm pretty much
Wow.
out on Russell
Okay.
Gage.
All right, that'll do it there for that matchup. The last 1:00 game on the board, the Baltimore Ravens playing against the Cleveland Browns. This will be the second straight game for the Browns against the Ravens. They had a bye week in the middle. I think that's the only time I can remember that happening in my watching of the NFL. But the last time the Browns played the Ravens, they abandoned the run. Completely uncharacteristic for the Browns. Both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were active and both busted. Do you see that happening again? I know you're not benching Chubb, but it's more for do you actually have a speculative play of a Kareem Hunt this week?
For sure. I just listed off all the running backs that were missing. And the waiver wire was not great this week. So I think I almost said Kareem Chubb.
Kareem Chubb?
Fun. Kareem Chubb. Kareem Hunt definitely should be in your lineups this week if you need a running back. I think, flex option is definitely there. Even if you need an RB2, I definitely think he could be into your lineup.
Yeah, and honestly, like the run game is something that you abandon when you're getting blown out. And I don't care what happened in earlier matchups. The Ravens are a fraud. They do not blow out anybody. I don't care if they're playing the Detroit Lions. They will find some way to only be ahead of them by a score or only down by a field goal and leave it go to the fourth quarter. I'm pretty sure that the Ravens GM is like, dude, this year we're going to need some ratings. We're going to need to boost those ratings. Don't care about the team. Don't care about the wins. Ratings is what we need. So they're finding ways to stay close in every single game. And if the Browns are close in a game, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run it with Chubb and Hunt. They're going to get them both involved in the pass game as well, especially with Baker's injuries. So I have 100% confidence in these running backs going into this matchup. Fraud Ravens.
I also think it's worth pointing out, talking about the Cleveland Browns, David Njoku is on the COVID list. Harrison Bryant is out. So that only leaves Austin Hooper. So welcome to the tight end dartboard, Austin Hooper. But I think because of the lack of receiving options, Jarvis Landry is going to play, but he was limited all week in practice. I think we could even see Kareem Hunt be more used as a wide receiver option. And then, I think even with the loss of Marlon Humphrey for the Ravens, not probably in your redraft leagues, or maybe if you have him in dynasty and your dynasty wide receivers aren't good, or again, if you're looking for daily fantasy, I think this could be a game that we get a couple or a deep shot or two for Donovan Peoples-Jones. So definitely a sleeper there. And again, the big news is Austin Hooper might be the only tight end out of the three. So a guy that could be in your lineup.
Would you go Austin Hooper or Ricky Seals-Jones? Just throwing a random one out there for you.
Austin Hooper.
Okay.
Because Ricky Seals-Jones is coming off of injury. If Ricky Seals-Jones was healthy and still playing like he was the beginning of the season when we lost Logan Thomas, I'd go with him. But since he hasn't played for a while, might be a little bit of rust, I'm going to go with Austin Hooper because there's no other options there at tight end for the Browns.
Okay.
I kind of want to puke at the fact that I would even have to start Ricky Seals-Jones or Austin Hooper. But I think I would go Austin Hooper in this matchup just because I don't like the receivers the Browns have. I think they're going to have to throw the ball at some point. And, like we've been saying, Marlon Humphrey out. It adds a little less secondary. I think Austin Hooper's the guy. And we know that Austin Hooper has the talent to get it done as well. I've seen more out of Hooper in his career than I've seen out of Ricky Seals-Jones in his career.
That's true. And again,
I definitely just ask.
No, it's definitely a good ask. And tight ends have been so bad this year, and we were losing Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, and Dallas Goedert this week on buys. Like, can the tight end position
Plus you're down
worse?
Darren Waller, and you're probably down TJ Hawkinson. Like, the tight ends are devastated this week.
Yeah, like Evan Ingram might be like tight end 5 on the season, which is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But we can move to the Ravens side. One of the obvious tight end plays is Mark Andrews, just because he's always getting targets and he's one of the few healthy studs left. We're playing Lamar Jackson because of his rushing ability, even if they're not going to be fantastic in the passing game. Are you in on Hollywood Brown in this matchup? He still seems to be getting enough targets and breaking enough plays that he's been fantasy relevant, but he's not been that same receiver he was after the hot start to start the season.
Yeah, I think Hollywood Brown's the only Ravens receiver that I'm willing to play.
I could agree with that.
Okay, and that pretty much will wrap up the Baltimore Ravens there and move us on to the 4 o'clock window, where the New York Giants are traveling out to LA Chargers, who are dealing with COVID issues. Big one is Keenan Allen. We mentioned earlier he's out this week with COVID, and Mike Williams is on the COVID list as I believe he's as a close contact, which would mean he could be back. I'm not 100% sure how that really works anymore. But Mike Williams may not play as well. I think if it's him without Keenan Allen, he's an auto start in your lineup with how good he's been. If they're both out, do you consider a Jalen Guyton or any of their other wide receivers, or are you just kind of trying to avoid the wide receiver room in general?
Well, I'm in a league where you can start as many running back, wide receiver, and tight ends as you want, as long as you are starting X amount of offensive players. And in that league, I am missing Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Keenan Allen, and Adam Thielen this week. So I rolled with Jalen Guyton. If you are in a situation where you are that light on players and you need someone, I think he's definitely worth looking at. Look, it's a good matchup. The Giants' defense is nothing to really get excited over, and Justin Herbert is going to get his. He's going to get his points. I think Austin Eckler becomes the number 1 fantasy running back this week. Hot take, maybe. But I think I would play Eckler.
I agree with that one. Not a hot take.
Back. All right. Eckler is the number 1 running back this week, in my opinion. I think you play him over any other running back. But you're still going to get some points through the passing game. And I think Guyton is going to be the guy that they're going to turn to. He's got the speed. He's got the quickness. I think he's going to be the guy.
I'm with you there. Daily fantasy option, potential for a super cheap guy. Also, if you really want to look even cheaper, Josh Palmer has a chance. He's a rookie 3rd-round pick from this year. And I think dartboard candidate because of missing top 2 receivers, Jared Cook, because I know the tight end position's been rough. Jared Cook's another option for you out there in the tight end market.
Yeah, I think Jared Cook. I'd start Jared Cook over Austin Hooper, Ricky Seals-Jones. I think Jared Cook could have a big week this week. And honestly, like Donald Parham might even catch a touchdown because that's how banged up they are. And then I'll do my best to understand the NFL COVID rules. So from my understanding, Mike Williams is unvaccinated, which means he has to be away from the team for 5 days and test every day. But if he tests negative, then he can come back and play. Similar to, we saw this with the Allen Lazard when he tested positive for the Packers, but because they played on Thursday night, he wasn't ineligible to play, but if it was been a Sunday game, he would have been good to go. And he has tested positive or negative all week. So as long as he wakes up Saturday, test negative, and test negative on Sunday, Mike Williams should be good to go. But on the Giants side, they're missing a ton. I'm just going to say receivers, but they're missing a ton of people. Daniel Jones is out. Sterling Shepard, and Kenny Galladay is questionable. Kadarius Toney is out. Like Evan Ingram, that's the guy. Like, but honestly, and that's because the Chargers haven't been very great against the tight ends, so it's a good matchup. But man, it's gonna be a rough watch.
Yeah, I'm benching Saquon Barkley because he's basically the only person on the Giants that they have. So I feel like the defense is going to be solely honed in on Saquon Barkley. Plus, he hasn't been that fantastic to begin with because, the Giants decide every year, no matter how bad our offensive line is, let's not fix it. Let's just let it be bad. And it's no different this year. It's still trash. So Barkley hasn't had any room to run as well. So I am benching Barkley in one league. Obviously, in most leagues, if you have Barkley, you don't really have the choice to bench him. If it's between like a Saquon Barkley or a Dontrell Hilliard, obviously you're playing Barkley. But if you have the depth, this might be a guy you want to shy away from because that defense is going to be locked in on Barkley. The Giants are going to have to find somebody else on that roster. Maybe it is Evan Ingram. Maybe it's somebody else to step up and, I don't know, do something for him.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I think there's actually a decent chance that Sterling Shepard could play, but without Daniel Jones, I don't know if I would trust anybody in that offense. Like, I mean, you probably are playing Saquon if you're not in a situation like Tyler, like you said. Like, you play Saquon over some of those not obvious choices. But the Giants offense could literally go out there and score 7 points. And maybe Saquon gets that touchdown. Maybe Evan Ingram gets that touchdown, but you don't know. And I don't even think that's guaranteed. Like, the Chargers have been a tough defense. The Giants are completely banged up. I'm avoiding them if I can at all costs. But you can go out there and throw a dartboard at Evan Ingram if you want.
Yeah, I don't hate that one, but again, we're getting real deep on the dartboard.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next matchup with the Detroit Lions and the Denver Broncos. Another team that's digging deep. I mean, there is, I believe, 23 people on the Lions injury report this week. 7 of them don't have an injury designation heading into the game. 3 of them are out. 1 is doubtful, and the rest are questionable. So a lot of guys banged up. We not know who's all there. But the big names, TJ Hawkinson, doubtful. There goes another tight end that we might lose this week. DeAndre Swift, unlikely to play, but he was progressing. So maybe if you're an owner, we might get him back week 1.
He's out. He's officially out.
Oh, I meant to say out. But if I did, I was saying he might come back next week. That's where I was going with that. So apologies for getting too excited because I am a DeAndre Swift owner and I definitely need him back for the fantasy playoffs. Jamar Williams is out. He was on the COVID list on Friday. And man, congrats to Jared Goff for winning NFC Offensive Player of the Week last week on leading the Lions to their first win. Congrats to him. But what's that?
He's better than Stafford. You know, I didn't see Stafford winning Player of the Week last week.
We do not have time for this debate right now. I cannot. We're going to keep talking. We're going to talk about, is there a Lions running back, whether it's, Jamar Jefferson, who was on the injury report, but became, was taken off, all good to go for game time. And the other running back, I am not going to try to pronounce his name. I'll let one of you all do that because I will butcher it. But are either of those two guys, because there's no one left, willing to throw him in there?
Yes, there is. Guys, you both mentioned your DraftKings guy. I heard Jalen Guyton from George. I heard a Golden Tate from Cody. My DraftKings cheap guy this week is Jermar Jefferson. I don't even know if you could see that, but all 3 of those guys are in a lineup for me right now. I'm going with the Couch GMs lineup this week. We have a lot of room to spend on some big name players after this. But Jermar Jefferson, I think he is one of the most underrated rookie running backs in the league. He is definitely impressing me this year from the little bit that he does get used. He just didn't have the potential to really shine with Swift and Jamal Williams in front of him. But now that they're both out, it's going to fall on Jermar Jefferson, in my opinion, not the other guy whose name we will not pronounce. So I think Jefferson's worth a play if you have running back needs. Obviously, we talked about the amount of running backs that are out this week. Maybe you're a Swift owner. Maybe you're a Jonathan Taylor owner. Maybe you're a Damian Harris owner. Whatever it is, maybe you're missing running backs. If you are desperate and you need to go to the waiver wire to pick somebody up, Jermar Jefferson's available in, every league. So go out and pick him up. He's worth a start.
I'm also on the Jermar Jefferson train. So if you guys happen to want to look at the other guy, just type IGWE into your search bar and you'll find it, because I'm sure there's no one else that has those letters together anywhere in their name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it either. But right, Jermar Jefferson, the guy to go.
Iggy.
I'll give it a shot. His first name was Godwin. I got that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Igwabuke? That's what we're going to go with. Igwabuke. Godwin Igwabuke. Yeah, let's just call him Iggy for short. But there's not a lot of love for the Lions this week. Congrats again on your win last week. It was tremendous. The Denver Broncos side, not as many injuries. The big one is Melvin Gordon is questionable. Vic Fangio expects him to play. How much does that hurt Javonte Williams? Is this back to a 50-50 split? Is Javonte proved after 1 week that he is the guy and Melvin Gordon might take a back seat? George's already shaking his head because I think we're all in agreement it's 50-50.
The only reason that they could give more to Javonte Williams is because they might want to ease Melvin Gordon back in. Maybe it ends up being a 60-40 split. But I honestly think in a matchup against the Lions that pretty much lost everybody of relevance, as much as they looked good a little bit against or in their matchup last week, the Broncos could go up big. a 50-50 split could still mean 15 to 20 carries for both backs. Both might be fantasy relevant. I love Javonte Williams this week, even if Melvin Gordon comes back. Maybe I'm a little bit more worried about Melvin Gordon if they decide to limit him on the way back, but I actually like playing him as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty solid. And the
Yeah.
Bengals wide receivers, like, for as good as they're on paper, they have been terrible for fantasy. And I know it's a great matchup, but, like, damn, I don't want to play any of Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, or Tim Patrick against the Detroit Lions, which is crazy to think, but they have just been so abysmal for fantasy this year. Are you guys willing to throw any of them out there?
I just want to say that you just said the Bengals wide receivers have been pretty good this year, and I legit thought I zoned out or something long enough that we moved on to our next matchup, and I was like, "Oh God, don't throw it to me," because I don't know how we moved on to the next matchup. But you did end up following it up with the receivers. Yes, it is Jeudy, Patrick, and it is the Broncos receivers. But no, I don't think any of them are trustworthy at this point. I like Jeudy the best out of all of them, but I don't think Judy's startable. And Sutton should be good, but he's never is. Tim Patrick was good while there was injuries, but he's falling to the wayside a little bit. I don't trust any of them. I really only like Javonte Williams in this matchup. I'm not even a huge fan of Noah Fant. I know that sounds crazy, but he wasn't heavily utilized last week. It looks like the offense is moving away from him a little bit. He's less and less of a trustworthy tight end this year. So the only guy I like personally is Javonte Williams.
And you're probably starting Noah Fant out of desperation because of how many tight ends are out this week. But I'm with you. He's kind of falling away from the tight end 2 group and closer to the dartboard now, which is kind of sad, but he still will be at like a top end dartboard play most likely just because his potential. The other thing about the way Cody said that is you can almost compare the Broncos and the Bengals wide receivers because the Bengals wide receivers have been making you pull your hair out too. It's just they've been a step above the trio of Broncos wide receivers. We can move right on to the Bengals, who are hosting the San Francisco 49ers. We talked also a lot about how Jamar Chase has come back down to earth in recent weeks, and we don't know how to start the trio. Are you starting all 3 against the 49ers and hoping? Who's your favorite of the group if you want to pick? Where are you at?
I'm still starting Chase as my number 1. T. Higgins is my number 2. Tyler Boyd is at the bottom for me. That is my rankings of their receivers, personally.
Yeah, and if I'm going up based off of the last 4 weeks, which I am going to, I'm going to flip the top 2, but I think they're incredibly close. And then Tyler Boyd is definitely near the. He's not even startable for me at this point.
All right. The other thing I think that's worth noting is Joe Mixon is questionable with an illness, but I believe he's going to be good to go. I think I've heard he's progressing. So I wouldn't worry too much out there if you're a Mixon owner. It just might happen to be a week where he gets 20 carries instead of 30. But I still think he's going to be fine. Anybody else in the Bengals are starting?
Well, I think you should go, if you're a Mixon owner, you should go pick up Samaje Perine because he hasn't practiced all week with an illness. And some people are saying game time decision. Like, don't get stuck with having to do this last minute, so be prepared. Pick up Samaje Perine. And I do want to circle back to the wide receivers. T. Higgins is listed as questionable with an ankle injury. So that would probably actually flip it to Jamar Chase as the number 1 option for me. But if Higgins goes, I still think he's a pretty safe play.
Right. I think that pretty much wraps up the Bengals then. We can go to the 49ers side because there's a lot of injury news to talk about over there. I'll start with Debo Samuel because you know how important he is to the 49ers and to your fantasy teams and to the backfield. He is questionable. They said that he seemed very excited to be back at practice today, on Friday, I should say. He was limited. No idea if he's going to go. I feel like he's going to fall closer to the game time decision category, or you might hear an update on him from some of the beat writers on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. Are you trusting Debo Samuel if he comes back? Are you worried? Cody's shaking his head yes, so he would trust 100%.
Yeah, if Debo's out there, I'm playing him.
If Debo's in, you play. It's that simple.
Yep.
If Debo is out, you need to look at the other running backs. It is worth noting Elijah Mitchell is out. I know that Jeff Wilson is questionable, but they did say he had a flare-up in his knee, and he was looking slow to begin with anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is out, or if he's at least just
He is actually not on the injury report anymore.
I still would not be surprised if he's not utilized heavily. If he's having a flare-up in his knee and he already looks slow, I think that they're going to lean elsewhere. So I think JaMychal Hasty is going to be the guy that is going to get that backfield. But do I trust JaMychal Hasty in my starting lineup? Probably about as much as I'm starting Ty Johnson. I don't like it. If you have to play him, you're going to play him. But for the most part, I don't like it. I'm not going to play him. I think if Debo plays, which it's trending towards he will, you got to play him. He's going to take the running back carries. He's going to take the wide receiver targets. I like George Kittle a lot. Boy, has that dude come back from injury with a fire under him. He is playing lights out. He is awesome right now. Other than that, Brandon Ayuk isn't a horrible play, but he's still one of those guys that you just really have no trust in anymore.
All right. I got some questions with Brandon Ayuk because, he's seeing almost 90% of the snaps over the last few weeks. He's been getting involved. He did have a little bit of a dip without Debo there last week. But Brandon Ayuk or Brandon Cooks? Let's just go. I have a couple.
Ayuk.
See,
Ayuk.
What play? Thank God you said Ayuk. I was like, if you said Brandon Cooks after you gave me for Russell Gage or Brandon Ayuk.
Ayuk.
I don't wanna. Ayuk.
Okay, and then any of the Bengals wide receivers are Ayuk. Or sorry, not Bengals, Broncos. I cannot get these two teams straight.
Oh. All the Bengals wide receivers except for Boyd.
Broncos wide receivers or Ayuk?
I would go Judy, Ayuk, and then Sutton and Patrick.
Yeah. For me, it's Judy, Ayuk, and then bench and release.
Yeah, Ayuk is the top for me even in that scenario, but I just had to ask because we were talking the 49ers wide receivers. I think that definitely is enough for them. So and we talked about the Bengals already. I feel like we didn't spend enough time on this game. It should be a good one, but the last time we thought the Bengals was going to be a good one, that game was wild and crazy and back and forth, kind of like one-sided back and forth. But anyways, let's move on to an actual good game, I think. Game of the week, potentially. Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game has me concerned for fantasy-wise. So, the Bills are a top defense, but the Buccaneers are a good offense. The Buccaneers have been pretty good against quarterbacks, but I still think you have to play Josh Allen. I don't think we should read into matchups too much. I'll let one of you guys pick which one because I feel like there's a lot to talk about on both sides of the ball.
Can I just say that I am excited for this game a lot because I think it's going to be an exposing game. Both of these teams came in favored in their conference. Both of these teams started the season hot, and it was looking like they were both favorites to be in the Super Bowl to represent their conference. And both teams have lost to some questionable teams lately, have been on a bit of a downswing, and have really have people questioning if they're really as good as we thought. They are basically the same team, in my opinion, based off of just that. And I am super excited to see which one of these two is going to come off as a real contender and which one of them is going to come off as more of a pretender. Or it could be a really, really well-played game on both sides, and they're both still good. Maybe it's going to be a poorly played game, and it's whoever sucks less wins. I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to expose a lot of people. But as far as fantasy-wise, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's two top defenses, but is there any way you bench Stephon Diggs at this point? I feel like you got to play him. If you have Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders, I wasn't playing them in a better matchup. I still don't trust them. I know they get the points. I don't love them. I would say I'd put them both on the same level as the Broncos, not Bengals wide receivers. It's kind of like they're there. They could get the points, but they're questionable. And running backs, don't give me any of them. I don't want a single one.
On the Bills side.
On the Bills side.
Okay.
And then I'll just go to the Bucs side right away. Leonard Fournette, is in.
Smash play.
I would smash play. You're also definitely playing Mike Evans. You're definitely playing Chris Godwin. And I would is Gronk still like around? Like I feel like I haven't heard much about Gronk since like week 3. I mean, I know he was out with injury a lot, but he's probably in as well.
Yeah, he's playing really well.
Yeah, so Gronk as well. Like after that, like I think what Tyler was getting to without saying it is you're playing your studs and you're not playing anyone more. Because I think there's definitely going to be points to be had despite there being good defensive matchups, but I wouldn't push it. Because this could be a high-scoring game in the sense it's 28-21. There's going to be touchdowns to go around, but it's not going to be enough points to go around where everybody is going to be fantasy relevant.
Just to clear it up for you, George, since Gronk came back, he has gotten 10, 17, and 20 in fantasy. So he's
back to the same old Gronk at the beginning of the season. So he's definitely in that tier of tight end 1 to tight end 2s. Yes.
Alrighty. Well, that's pretty much that matchup. I do want to give one other name for the Buccaneers, and that's only because I think it's going to be funny and the guys will both laugh. But with Antonio Brown out, the guy that has been filling into that role has not been Tyler Johnson, has not been Scotty Miller. It has been Rashad Perryman, the guy who I apparently at the beginning of the season, like back in February, bet $1 that he would be the top receiver on the Lions. So maybe just keep an eye on that guy because he's playing the Antonio Brown role in a lot of snaps of it. So not saying you're putting him in your lineup, not even saying you're picking him up, but I knew the guys would laugh and enjoy that one. Sunday night football, Bears, Packers. I almost said Bears because the Bears are so bad. I'd rather have the Bears. But Chicago Bears side, Justin Fields is going to play. Andy Dalton is doubtful, so he should not have any. Maybe we'll see Nick Foles at the second half. Maybe. Never know.
Ooh.
David Montgomery, banged up, but expected to still go. He is listed with a shoulder, groin, and glute injury. I mean, one person tweeted out body, which I was like, that's kind of funny, but like he's still expected to go, but he's definitely banged up. They're getting Allen Robinson back. I mean, that's exciting. And then Tyler's guy and Couch GM's guy, Darnell Mooney. I named a lot of players, but which ones are you actually willing to start?
Mooney.
I mean, still don't even love Mooney as much with Robinson coming back, but yeah, probably Mooney.
I feel like if you have David Montgomery, odds are you're starting him because you don't have the other pieces if he is active, obviously. But if you do have the depth, he's another guy that I'm not thrilled with this week. I was really excited for him to come back. I thought he was a guy that I traded away some big names to get because I thought he was going to be huge, explosive after he came back, and he just hasn't been as exciting. I think it helps having Justin Fields there because I think that adds another dynamic to the offense. They're going to start getting things going a little more. But even with the injuries, the Packers are still a pretty good defense. I'm not thrilled with starting David Montgomery in this matchup.
Well, now we know Tyler slept last week during football because David Montgomery put up 24 points. So I think that was what you were waiting for.
I did see that. It's just... I watched the game as well, though, and it was like, I don't know, man. He just seemed slow. It was kind of like a Zeke situation where it was like, he has the weeks where he puts up the points, but watching him, I was just like, he doesn't look like himself. He doesn't look like he's out there with the same explosiveness as he used to. So I'm almost afraid that 24 points was a bit of a fraud, and he's going to dip this week. Maybe it's just because I'm the hot takes guy. That is potential, but I don't know. I'm not thrilled with the guy this week.
Alrighty. Well, that's enough Bears talk. That's way too much Bears talk. We'll talk about the Packers. And
of course,
the big news is Reynold Cobb had core muscle surgery last week. He'll be out indefinitely. Another guy that could get back in the playoff run, but he's most likely going to hit IR either today when you're listening to this or early next week when they start getting some of those big name players back that we talked about.
No, the big news is Aaron Rodgers practiced for the first time in like 3 weeks.
That I was getting there. Don't steal my thunder. I was getting there. He did practice. Jordan Love is going to miss the game for COVID. So if he would get hurt or his toe flares up, it would be Kurt Bankert. If you don't know who that is, he is a third-year player out of Virginia. And his dad did my very first tattoo. Just a fun little fact right there. And two other names to watch, though, on this game. Not that you should be scared to play them. I think they're going to play. They're not on the injury report heading into the game. But Javonte Adams didn't practice all week with a hamstring injury. Definitely something to monitor there. We don't know. No one seems to think it was serious. More seems like it was just like precautionary, like it felt a little tight, so we're not even going to let him practice. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he was eliminated on Friday because he had a little bit of a back issue pop up. And before the injury, I was like, I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling should be a guy that you could pick up because he's been seeing a ton of targets the last two games. Obviously, they were on a bye last week. Without Reynold Cobb, he could be the next man up that steps up. But just monitor his back injury. But, I mean, Rodgers, I think, is a great play this week. You could probably play Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon as a flex. Aaron Jones as a running back, A.J. Dillon as a flex if needed. And then you mentioned David Montgomery, and the Packers have yet to give up a 100-yard rusher this year, so that's another reason to be concerned about David Montgomery.
I'm with you, Cody. I think you nailed it. I think that's enough Packers talk. I'm ready to move on to Monday Night Football, which is a really good matchup, in my opinion. I mean, one team does have an overrated quarterback, and it's not Kyler Murray. But other than that, it's honestly a really good matchup. You got the Los Angeles Rams. You got the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins back. Their offense just looked exciting yet again for the first time in a while, forever, it seems. Last week, having both of them back. And on the Rams side, you're starting to see OBJ get some touchdowns. He had a fantastic touchdown celebration this past week. He was using a self-res from Warzone for any of our Call of Duty players out there. That was pretty fun. But guys, I think there is fantasy players galore, which, might I say, just makes my heart hurt because we're talking about final week before the playoffs. And this might be the game that you need to rely on to make your fantasy playoffs or not. Or maybe you're fighting for that first round bye or not. And we have a lot of fantasy players on the Monday night game, meaning your heart has to just be skipping a beat all the way up until the Monday Night Football game to see if you finally make it in. I feel for a lot of you out there. I feel for us as well because I know we're in those situations. But let's go ahead and talk about some of those fantasy guys. George, you want to hit on any of these Rams?
There's a lot of debate still with the OBJ versus Van Jefferson, and I'm almost in the both category. I know Cooper Kupp. Yeah. I mean, I know Cooper Kupp was a little bit banged up, but there's no doubt he's the number one. I hate trios of wide receivers, and I'm going trio of wide receivers here on the Rams, if that tells you anything. I think we just all have to hope that this game puts up 55 points on both sides or something. I don't know.
Hey, this is a game that could do it. We've seen the Rams do it, I believe, on Monday night before. So just need the Cardinals
against the Chiefs. Best game of the NFL history, I want to say.
Yep.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it was a good game. I don't know if I'd say best game in NFL.
It was best game ever.
But anyways,
Cody's like,
the other guy on the
Packers.
Nah, definitely the best game was that Jags-Bills game that ended 6-9. I mean, that's definitely the best game. That's all I'm saying.
Nice.
But Daryl Henderson, he's going to be the big question mark. And this podcast was released on Saturday, so hopefully they got some clarity at the end of the day, and they'll be, he'll play. You will get some sort of insight. Definitely stay tuned. We'll keep you updated Saturday, Sunday as this goes out because he's going to be really interesting. If you're a Henderson owner and you were able to grab Sony Michel, you should have no reservations playing Daryl Henderson because if he's not playing, you throw in Sony Michel. If you don't, and you need a win this week, because it's the Monday night game, I think you have to pivot elsewhere. And there's not a ton of great options to do so. Hopefully you can find one. Even like a guy like Jeff Wilson, who, might not be great, I'd rather play him than take the flyer on Daryl Henderson if I need to win this week. Just because I'd rather, get the points than, because we saw last week he was active but didn't see a snap. So it was almost like last year, I feel like it was around this time too, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was supposed to be, a game time decision. He was active. Everyone was like, oh, he's going to play. And then the night game rolled around and he stood on the sideline the whole game and everybody was livid. Like that, we could see that again. with Daryl Henderson. And unfortunately, there's no one on the Cardinals that you could pick up. Maybe someone dropped Chase Edmonds, who looks like he might be back this week, if you have Daryl Henderson, and then you could just throw him out there and hope. But Rams-wise, I like all the receivers, and then Daryl Henderson is definitely the biggest question mark, I think, of the week when it comes to like running backs that are normally typically pretty good, but especially this week 14 trying to get into the playoffs is a hard one to judge.
Well,
I think
you mentioned him, so
there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You mentioned
we're on
him,
the same
so
page. Go ahead.
Chase Edmonds coming back this week, most likely. James Conner has been really solid in Edmonds' absence. Conner was also really good when Edmonds was there. The only issue was he had way less playing time, way less snaps. He just got all of the touchdowns. With Chase Edmonds coming back, George, I'm going to make you have to do it since you tried to steal my thunder. Chase Edmonds, James Conner. Are you playing either of them, both of them, neither of them? What are you doing?
If we get some confidence that Chase Edmonds is back and he's 100%, I'm in on both. I think James Conner's a play regardless. I remember back in our midseason show where I was trying to hype up James Conner and how many touchdowns he's been scoring. And there's no doubt that the Cardinals get down near the goal line and they want to push the ball in the end zone with James Conner. That's just how it's been. So I almost don't care if Edmonds is back. Conner's like knocked down to 8 carries in this game. He's got a great chance of scoring a touchdown and giving you the points you need to move on into your fantasy playoffs. So I like him better than Edmonds. I would play Edmonds if it seems like it's confident that he's going to be able to handle a solid workload, but I'm not sleeping on James Conner.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think James Conner you can still play him even with Edmonds coming back. Edmonds, again, it's going to be tough to play him because it's the Monday night game unless we get some true clarity. But running backs are hard to find. So if he's coming back, it's definitely a decent play. But guys, I think that wraps up all of our week 14 matchups. Good luck to anybody that's relying on a specific game to get into the fantasy playoffs. But speaking of the fantasy playoffs, and before we go, I saw a little bit of it was going around Twitter this morning. It was going around the fantasy community circles. And I want to get your guys' opinion. We can debate it. And someone reached out to, I can't remember the exact fantasy guy that they reached out to and who shared it off the top of my head. But this person is in a league where the 5 and 6 seed, 6 teams make the playoffs, play each other this week. And they have a 1-game edge over the 7 seed. So apparently in that league, the 5th and 6th seed team are debating benching their whole teams and so that they will finish with a 0-0 tie, meaning they both can't be passed. What are your thoughts? Is this collusion? Is there some ethics to this? I know we're big into like play the team. What are your thoughts on this whole scenario?
Well, let me start by saying, if you agree to do this, if you are the 5th or 6th seed team and you agree to bench your whole roster with somebody else to take that 0-0 tie and both make it, the level of trust that you have to have in this other guy is ridiculous. Like, I love both of you to death, and I would do anything for you guys. But if you propose that to me, there's no way in hell I'm doing it, especially with George. I don't trust that guy. Look at his face. You just can't trust it. I would not doubt him picking up a Monday night kicker 1 minute before kickoff and throwing him into the lineup so that he still ends up getting the win and I get knocked out of the playoffs. That trust is ridiculous. However, back to what you actually were asking, I think it is collusion. And I get where they're coming from. I get the thought process of, hey, let's both be safe. Let's make the playoffs. Let's get in. But it kind of kills the entire spirit of fantasy football, all the fun that goes into it. Who wants to win by default over a 0-0 tie? Who wants to say they earned the playoffs by benching their roster and tying? You didn't earn it. You deserve to play for it. That 7th seed has to win their game to pass the loser anyway. So they are trying to earn their spot. So you should have to earn your playoff spot as well. I don't like it at all. I would definitely shut that down as commissioner.
Yeah, and I was actually trying to think about how this would play out in our league of record because we have a rule book in place for situations like this. And while we say that you are expected to play a full lineup except for certain situations where, like, say you don't want to drop a kicker for a bye week or a defense or whatever. So I think that it probably would get shut down in our league of record because of that kind of wording in our rule book. But if you look at even the definition of the word collusion, it's two teams working together that undermines another team or the rest of the league. So like that is something that two teams are working together, even though both are benefiting, and it's not one benefiting and one sacrificing. It's undermining the league. It's undermining the 7 seed. So I'm with you. I don't think that that's something that should go through. And I actually love what you said at the beginning also, Tyler, how the level of trust that needs to go into that. Man, if I was the 6th seed and I saw the 7th seed won his game and would get through, like 2 minutes before Monday Night Football, I'd put in a kicker, a defense, a backup wide receiver that could get one catch, beat the 5 seed, knock him out of the playoffs. Like,
this is why I said I
I'm
wouldn't
telling
trust
you.
you, George. This is why. Look, we talked. This question reminds me a lot of the situation that we debated last year, and I'll bring it up again, where it's a little bit different, but there was a top team, like a first place team, that was playing the 7th seed team, and it was if he won his game, that team was not going to make the playoffs. But if he lost his game, that team was going to make the playoffs because of a situation where 5th played 6th and loser would be passed. And this guy wanted the 7th seed in the playoffs because of the fact that he had a weaker lineup and thought he was more beatable. So he purposely started his worst lineup possible so that 7th seed would win and make the playoffs. In that situation, as unethical as it is, and as much as you are kind of undermining the league, he still at least started a lineup. So in that case, I feel like you can't hate on it as much. There's no way to penalize stupidity for playing bad players, but there is ways to penalize not playing players at all.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat there. I definitely think the scenario I presented at the top, asking you the question, is definitely 100% collusion. The fact that two people are coming together. Now, in Snyder's example, again, it doesn't seem right. But as the top seed, in some way, you've earned the right to kind of control what you can control. So I do think it comes back to, starting a full lineup, excluding a kicker because they don't belong in fantasy football anyways, or what George said. But if you want to start Brandon Ayuk instead of Tyreek Hill to try to help you get a better matchup, okay, that's one thing. That's playing the long game. But fantasy football is so up and down anyways. You should still just be playing the best matchup. And again, I know for our league of record, we like to keep the competition high. We're not a league that, the person with the last place team gets the first pick next year. Because we don't want teams halfway through the season quitting. We want competition throughout. So by doing something of that nature definitely hurts that. But I think, one, George made a good point. Your league should have some sort of rule book in place for this situation, which is definitely a great idea to put something together, whether it's how you're going to manage trades, how you're going to manage people, inactive players, starting lineups. And if you are the commissioner in this league and you don't have a rule book, I'm pretty sure you can get everyone to vote on this. But I think even if they go through and it's still 0-0, you should put a lineup in. You should automatically
autofill with their
the
top
lineup.
players. Yeah.
Yep. Or start the lineup they had from the last week, unless a player's on bye to pick a player off their bench.
Oh no, I'm a ruthless
it a day.
commissioner. I am dictator commissioner, and if I see 5th and 6th seed both purposely benching lineups so that they make the playoffs, and they are going to cheat the league like that, I'm booting both of them, and I am fixing the rosters so that 7th and 8th seed are now 5th and 6th seed making the playoffs. 5th and 6th are now out of the playoffs. Suck on that. Try it again next year. That's what I'm doing as commissioner personally. I'm not making them start rosters.
That actually is a good solution too, because that's your penalty of, you tried to undermine the league. Here it is. It's no different than NFL taking away draft picks for teams or doing something stupid. You're taking away a playoff berth. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I did see one other thing, and it kind of goes along with what we were talking about. I like your boldness to it, but people were relating this, and I don't think it's 100% relatable to close matchups. So, for example, if you have a matchup and you're heading into this Monday night game, and the guy you're playing has a 2-point lead or a 1-point lead, and he has Matt Prater, and he decides to pull him because kickers can sometimes get negative points. Like at that point, like I think, okay, like that's actually smart general managing. I understand.
Yes.
The whole aspect of it. Like it sucks because like you want to hold out hope. But I don't think that this was a couple comments I saw under this question. Like they were correlating this apples to apples. I'm like, I don't think that's at all
it's
anywhere
definitely
close
not
to
the same, because that's not trying to hurt another team. That's you guaranteeing yourself a victory. If you did that on the opposite side, you were down 1 point, the other team winning would help you, and you benched your kicker so you didn't win. That's different. If you're solidifying a victory by benching somebody, that's a strategic play. That would even be allowed in our rule book, because that's under smart GMing and just managing your win.
Right. Well, I think this has been a fun debate, and hopefully you're not in a league out there where this is happening, because, we want fantasy football to be fun for everybody. We want this podcast to be fun for everybody. So good luck on your fantasy attempts to get into the playoffs this week. And as always, thanks for listening.
Absolutely. And guys, as always, if you have any questions about your lineup, who should you start? Should it be Ayuk? Should it be a Broncos or Bengals receiver? You let us know, and we will let you know the best lineup and possible. Reach out to us if you have any questions. If you want to talk smack, tell us how much you don't trust George. That is all totally fine. But guys, moral of the story, this podcast is so much more fun for us and way more fun for you when you get involved.
And thank you all one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.
You darn tootin'. Boom.